So this piece is called Machine, Iron Chink, invented in 1901 and discovered in Steveston, the Georgia's in Steveston, and then it was remanufactured in China, in Beijing, China, in 2012. So that's all this information is in the title because I really want that to be transparent and all that information to be there. So the machine is called the Iron Chink, and it was a machine from the late 1800s, and it was kind of it was mostly used in the Pacific Northwest, all the way from Oregon up to Alaska. And it was called the Iron Chink because the human butchers who performed the task of beheading the fish and cleaning out the fish were mostly Chinese workers. And so when this machine was invented by a Canadian, actually, he called it the Iron Chink because he was replacing Chinese workers. And it was all part of like the mechanization of different machines and different processes in different sort of in canneries and also other kind of work environments. And so I discovered this machine maybe in 2011-ish, and at that time I was really excited by it because I was like, the name Iron Chink was so, you don't really hear that word much anymore. And so I was really struck by it, and also like the machine itself is quite aesthetically really beautiful. And so I started thinking about it. I started just doing a bit more research about this machine and found out all this information. And I found out that it was at the cannery in Steveston, which is now it's not a functional cannery anymore. It's the Gulf of Georgia Cannery is called. It's still called the Gulf of Georgia Cannery, but now it's a historic site. So it's managed by the Parks Canada. It's not a museum, but it's like a historic site. And so I went there and I saw the machine. It's about 2.5 meters tall. So this is a miniature version of it. And I hired a mechanical engineer to redraw every single. Basically, we recreated the blueprint of the machine, and we redrew every single spoke, every single gear. And then, so that this new blueprint was then sent to China, to Beijing, and to a modeling factory. They make like airplanes and architectural models. And then, the model that the factory then remanufactured and reconstructed this machine for us. And it was a miniature version. So this is about 70 centimeters tall. So a lot smaller than the original one, and it's not working. The only thing that works is this thing that spins. Nothing else spins.
It's on my back.
And so I was really interested in like sort of bringing that back in a full circle. Like having it made in China is basically the most important aspect of this piece. More or less, it's a critique thinking about current sort of like forms of capitalism and globalization. What happens when then instead of work being sourced in the local area, it's being outsourced, and how things are being hidden. Everything is still very racialized, but we don't really see it anymore. It's quite interesting to have this piece made showing this piece because I haven't worked in a sculptural way for a really long time. I don't really consider myself a sculptor anymore. And showing this piece now 2-3 years later gives it for me a completely different context. So I'm really excited to show it and to have it here in Victoria, just because also Victoria was part of, there were canneries here as well. I'm sure they used it here as well. And so it's a really sort of almost site-specific piece. I've shown it in Vancouver just recently, in June at Access Gallery in Vancouver. And so really well received, and people are quite fascinated by it. Also aesthetically, I think it's quite stunning as well. So that's been good. But Is there anything else you want me to say?
Okay. Question is about the color. So you decided the color because...
Okay, yeah. So the color is red. I mean, obviously red stands for China. It's kind of cliche. But the actual iron chink in Steveston, the Gulf of Georgia cannery, is also red. So it's not like a new color. But I consciously chose to have it spray painted red, just because it stands for China. Yeah, but also the material is it's actually plastic. It's not metal, and the original machine is made of iron. And so I consciously chose to use this new material, plastic, which is readily available, really cheap, China. I don't know if you go closer, the machine is like breaking apart. It's like there's lots of like areas where it's falling apart all the time, and every time I exhibit it, I have to glue it back together. And I really like it because it's quite pathetic. The machine itself is always breaking. It's not a solid piece of work. Constantly it breaks down. And I like how sad, how pathetic it is, and it keeps on. It's a failure. It's a complete failure. But that contextually or conceptually, it's really exciting. It adds a lot of other meanings to it as well.
How long are you going to show it? I mean, not here in Victoria, but where is the next stop, and for how long until completely breaks down?
Right. Well, I just showed this in Vancouver, and before Vancouver, I showed it in London, in the UK. But this is the last stop for now. I don't have any other plans for it right now. I probably just might go into my living room for I don't know how long. Yeah, I don't know, because for me also this is old work, and I would obviously love to keep on showing these things, but yeah, no plans for now, and I'm not gonna yeah, unless someone sort of asks for me to show it, I probably won't consciously choose to show it. Yeah. I have to personally drive, and I have to personally deliver the work. I cannot ship it, because if I ship it, it will just completely fall apart. So it might have to just stay in the BC area. Yeah, the Lower Mainland Island area. So yeah, it won't go far unless someone buys it. Yeah, of course, anything is for sale. Yeah. Instead of a plinth, like a normal plinth, I decided to show it on this crate. And this crate is what the machine came in. So when it was sent from China to me, I came in this crate, and I wanted to show, like, you can see, the details of its journey, and I want to really show and be transparent about, it was made in China, it was sent to me in England, and its journey. So this is also my works in this show, Workplace, and this and another drawing, there's two of them. They're called Workers Posing as Workers, and they are essentially a picture of a drawing of a picture. So the original document that I used was an archival photograph, and that I found in the BC archives, actually. And they were originally portraits or pictures of workers, and these were cannery workers, and the other drawing was a gold prospector, and they're all from around the early 20th century. And so I then, with that photograph, I then retraced it with my hand, with a pencil, and then from that drawing that I made from the image, I blew it up to this size. So this is about 50 so inches by 70 inches, and the faces are consciously cut out, and that is to kind of it's a play on those like carnival cutouts, where people can stand in the back and poke their face through, and that was a really conscious decision to have that. Number one, I can go back a bit and talk about history, because I work a lot with historical subjects, historical events, historical narratives and stories, and I'm really interested in them because specifically I'm really interested in history that are almost forgotten, things are lost, histories of people, of minority people, of gay people, of working class people, and that's because they're never really part of the official sort of like the official narrative of the country. You never really learn about those, and they quickly get forgotten. And also, what's really exciting about those kind of histories and those kind of stories is that they also exist mostly as memories, mostly as as oral history. They're not officially documented. Very few of these images of this actually is workers, but they were all Chinese and indigenous, and the other one is a Chinese worker. Very few of these images exist in the archives. Almost, you don't see very many of them, and that's because they were never officially sort of documented. No one really cared. But nonetheless, I kind of recreate. I give them like a new life. I recreate. I reconstruct from what I can find into a new thing. And for this, I redrew it and then I blew it up. The faces are cut out, and I think what I'm really trying to achieve with this piece is that it's quite uncomfortable. If you know the history, it's quite uncomfortable for you to then poke your face through, because there's something that's politically incorrect about that. And I quite like that, because I think both of my works with the machine and then also with these drawings and also my present work, there's a sense of irony, there's a sense of discomfort in it, but it's kind of it's not the immediate feeling that you get. It works at a different level. It works at a much more subtle level, and I quite like that. I really like working at different levels, and having that come in maybe a bit later. And so it's really just to bring awareness to this kind of history, but also to reconstruct them and give them a new, like, what do these stories mean now in our contemporary modern context, and in our, in today, what do these images mean to us now? And for me, to recreate and to represent these historical situations is to create a anachronistic situation, into a situation that like time and temporality doesn't match. And when temporalities don't match, what happens then? When we're faced with like something from a different time that doesn't exist now, politically, what does that mean? Socially, what does that mean? So yeah, that's, I guess, what I'm trying to do with my